There comes a time, somewhere after 50, when you realize home isn't just about where you live. It's about how you live. It's about who you're becoming and what you're ready to make space for. I'm Juli Ford, real estate expert and longtime wellness coach, and someone who's lived in a multi-generational home for the past decade while reinventing my life and my business. And this is Home After 50, a podcast about what it really means to find, shape, and come home to a new season, to a new home, to a new version of yourself. Whether you're thinking about upsizing, downsizing, moving in with family, or just asking bigger questions about what's next, you're in the right place. Each episode, I will share stories, insights, and real strategies for women redefining home and life on their own terms. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's a calling. And this time, it's yours. Welcome back to Home After 50. Today, I would love to talk with you about multi-generational living family conversations. This is a topic that has been coming up for me in a lot of client meetings lately. I speak with families all over the country, here in Massachusetts, where I work locally, and then in many different states across the country where people have reached out to me because they have found me online through social media, or through my appearance on the news, or through my blog, my podcast, or my website. And they reach out to me to talk about possibilities for multi-gen living and what their family is facing, hoping for, dreaming into, and sometimes struggling with. There's a lot of complex situations that families face when they're thinking about multi-generational living. And one of the things that I find very frequently is that families often think about the house far more than they think about the conversations, the agreements, the dynamics, and even the finances and the legalities that go into creating a multi-generational home. I think it's natural that we all start envisioning the space that we want to live in together, because that's really sort of the driving factor that gets us interested in multi-generational living. But it's interesting to me how when I sit down to have a conversation with these families, they're very surprised by the number of topics that I bring up and suggest that they should begin discussing with each other. Most of them haven't gone there, haven't thought about these things yet together. So I'm working on a few tools behind the scenes, some just for my clients, but some that I will be offering. I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I am trying to create a very affordable toolkit of family conversations that I hope will be helpful to many families as they're considering multi-generational living, or already living in a multi-generational home, but needing some support around having better agreements, more clear agreements, better boundaries, and maybe just, making it a more successful experience all the way around, even if they have to backtrack a little because they didn't have those conversations ahead of time. So today on the podcast, what I thought I would do is just share with you a little bit about what I'm developing for these families and the kinds of things I'm thinking about offering to try to help them have great conversations. And I would love to get your feedback in the comments about, am I missing anything? Or how did this land with you? Am I bringing up topics that you haven't thought about yet? Have you, in your own multi-generational home or in your family as you're considering a multi-generational home, have you thought about these things, talked about these things? Because this will help inform better tools that I can create for my clients that I work with personally, and then for you as well, that I hope to offer in the near future. So one of the things I'm working on is a multi-generational family checklist. And this is a comprehensive checklist that really builds on my free multi-generational living guide and kind of takes it several steps further to really lay out the kinds of things that families should be considering. And I've bucketed those into, about 7 maybe more. Maybe six different categories. Plus, I'm also creating a bonus estate planning essentials checklist. I am not an estate planning attorney. I refer my clients to estate planning attorneys all the time. And this checklist is just including some things that I'm encouraging them to ask their estate planning attorneys about. So for the multi-gen family checklist, I'm just going to share with you my thoughts on the kinds of topics you should be having with your family as you're considering a multi-gen home. So one of them is the legal ownership and financial structure. So, well, actually, let's keep the finances out of it for a minute. Let's just talk about legal and ownership structure. So make sure that you have an estate planning attorney and a real estate attorney, because you've got to talk about how you're going to own the property together or separately, how you're going to take title, and then also how that affects your estate plans, your legal documentation, your will, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxies, and how that's going to protect inheritance rights for children, adult children, and grandchildren, not only for the family members who are living in the home, but how that's going to impact the family members who are not living in the multi-gen home with you. Another thing to talk about with legal and ownership structure is that you have defined exit strategies. Like, what if someone wants to move or sell, or what if someone passes away? You also need to be aware of legal requirements around local zoning laws for ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or multifamily conversions, if those are needed. And you've also need to think about talking with a tax advisor and discussing the tax implications of how you're structuring potential rental income, gift tax, capital gains tax. So make sure you also speak with a financial advisor and a CPA. The next area, and this is the part I think families like to talk about the most, is home features and layout. So make sure as you're going into this home together that you've discussed your wants and your needs for privacy. For example, do you need separate entrances? Do you need different levels in the house, which really can help with sound barriers and privacy and enjoyment? Do you need separate wings? Are you going to have a shared or separate kitchens? This is honestly the biggest one that I hear families talk about. I post a lot on social media, on Facebook and Instagram specifically, and there are a lot of conversations going on in the comments on my posts about how families are either successfully navigating multi-gen living or struggling with it. And I will tell you, kitchens are the number one hotspot. Families have the most difficulty when they don't have separate kitchen space. It is not always possible to have separate kitchen space. I fully understand that. But the families that are able to structure separate kitchen space, even if like one's a mini kitchen, not a full kitchen, they do seem to have an easier time because people can eat on their own schedule and eat the things that are important to them. The truth is we eat a lot, right? Like we're in the kitchen a lot during the day, and all of us have sort of different styles and rhythms and schedules, especially at different stages of life. So if you have families with kids and, older retired adults, you could be on wildly different schedules and want really different types of meals. And having to navigate a space that's shared really requires a lot of understandings and agreements and boundaries if you don't have the separate kitchens. Another home feature and layout to talk about is parking. Is the space you're considering, will it accommodate all the cars that you're going to need, and also guest parking? Have you considered accessibility? If you have older adults or anyone with physical challenges that might need special accessibility, maybe first floor suites or no step entries, wide doorways, grab bars, all of those things really should be considered. Flexibility. Are there adaptable rooms? When you're considering a multi-gen home, are there some rooms that maybe they could be an office, maybe they could be a nursery, maybe they could be a guest suite? Also, extras like outdoor spaces or noise buffering, as I mentioned before, with different levels of a home, storage space for everyone. I know in our house, we have the advantage to our house, our multi-gen house, is every floor of our house is built out and finished. So we have tons of living space, but that actually reduces the amount of storage space that we have. So we end up storing a lot in our garage. We don't park our cars in our garage. That's for storage. There are a couple motorcycles in there, but mainly it's for storage and hobbies. Rod likes to brew beer. on occasion. Luckily, we have like a big barn shed out back, so that is additional storage for us as well. But definitely think about storage. Think about HVAC. My mom is always cold. I'm always hot. We've had to figure out how to manage the flow of the HVAC system and also some supplementary heat in her apartment. Those are things you have to think about. And then location, the proximity to healthcare, schools, parks, grocery stores, hobbies, commuting. Do you want to be in a rural setting? Do you want to be in a suburban or urban setting? Then there's the logistics and the protections around the buying process. So, are you all on the same page about must-haves versus nice-to-haves? Do you already have a lender? Have you obtained a pre-approval if you're going to need a mortgage? Have you aligned your timelines? Sometimes this is a complex transaction where you're selling either one or even two homes and buying a home together, and all of those things need to be timed. Or maybe you have rental leases. So all of the sales dates, move out dates, end of leases, sale of one home, purchase of another home, and move-in dates all have to be aligned with one another. This is why it's really important to work with a real estate agent who fully understands the complexity of this kind of a situation and has experience with this. Have you budgeted for down payments? Down payments on homes can range anywhere from typically 3.5% to 20%. And earnest money, the money that you'll have to put down as a deposit to secure the home, that's typically up to 5%. Do you understand the buying process, offers, inspections, appraisals, financing contingencies? Are you feeling overwhelmed yet? This is a long list, right? I'm sharing with you everything I'm sharing with my clients. Now I'm putting this all together and, I'm putting this all together and I'm hit the microphone there if you can't see me. I get a little enthusiastic and speak with my hands. I'm sharing with you everything that I share with my clients in this package that I'm putting together for them. But I'm sharing this here because I really think it's important, even if, you're not a personal client or someone I work with closely, that you think about these things. So take notes rapidly or pause and take notes. Have you clarified how closing costs, utilities, and moving expenses will be shared? Some people who are moving into multi-gen homes, I just actually spoke with a family this week that none of them have ever owned a home, any of the generations that are moving in together. But oftentimes we do have some family members who have owned a home for a long time, but it's been a very long time since they bought or sold a home, and then maybe another generation that's never owned a home. Okay, post-move-in things to talk about. Family living agreements. Have you defined how your household expenses will be divided? Are you going to share groceries, utilities, maintenance costs? Have you agreed on who's responsible for what, like chores, lawn care, cleaning, child care, elder care, pets? This is the part where some big misunderstandings can come into play. If you move in together without talking about this ahead of time, you can really bump up against some misaligned expectations, and this could really make things challenging. So all of this really needs to be talked about. Have you discussed expectations with other family members who don't live in the household? I think that I've talked about this once on the podcast before, but we had a situation about a year ago, I think, where my mom was really not well, and it required a lot more support of her than it normally does. And we reached out to family members who don't live in the house because it's very easy to think that the family members who do live together in the household will just automatically take on the responsibility of extra care. But that's not necessarily a fair assumption, and it's not necessarily helpful to everyone. It can feel burdensome if one family member is just expected because they're there to take on the bulk of extra responsibility, especially during a tough and challenging time. So make sure that you're talking with other family members who may not live in the household with you about the kinds of support that you still expect and need from them and how they can chip in. We're just continuing to go down the family living arrangement list. Do you have set expectations for noise, for guests, for use of shared spaces? Are you going to be okay if someone has a guest come and stay for a week? How is that going to be navigated space-wise, privacy-wise? Do you have established privacy agreements? Do you knock before entering? Are there private areas of the home that some people don't go into without being invited? Do you have emergency plans? Goes back a little bit to what I was saying before, caregiving roles, medical directives, key contacts. How do people step in when people need extra support? Have you considered a written family operating agreement to prevent conflict? Now, I will fully admit we have not done this. Our agreement around family living arrangements is not in writing. Our legal agreements were, our financial agreements were right from the start, but we haven't found we needed to have written agreements, but I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think that if you're starting out right from the beginning, having these kind of conversations, that it might be actually really helpful and people might not feel bad about putting these things in writing if that's just the expectation right from the start. So that's the basic structure of my multi-gen family checklist. I'm still building this out and adding on to it. And I'm also, as I mentioned, building out the whole estate planning essentials section, which will be a conversation for another day. Hey, it's Julie. I am going to pause here and we are going to continue our conversation about multi-generational family conversations in the next episode, where I will be diving deeper into how to effectively have these family conversations. See you next time. Thanks so much for listening to Home After 50. If this episode resonated, I'd love it if you'd come hang out with me on Instagram. I am at It's Juli Ford, ITSJULIFORD. Just remember, no E on Julie. That's where I share ideas and behind the scenes about multi-generational living, real estate, business, and creating a next chapter that you love. And if you're curious about whether multi-generational living might be right for you, you can grab my free guide. It's in the link right in my Instagram bio. It's a simple way to get started imagining what's next. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's who we're becoming. See you next time.